Welcome to the NVIDIA Omniverse live stream, everybody. As you can see from, well, maybe you can't see everybody yet. They're popping on right now, but we have a full lineup of guests today. Not only do we have folks from the Foundry Nuke team, we also have members of the community like Z Ideas, who everybody will know who's a member of our Omniverse Discord server or the forums. We have Jacob Zirkle, who has a great YouTube channel that we're going to go into in a few minutes. We have Gary Christian from our team, who worked on an amazing scene based on the Da Vinci workshop. And we have our own Edward McEvenu, a former NVIDIA Omniverse ambassador, now a team member at Team Green at NVIDIA, who's going to go over also some of his experience working with Nuke. So the topic today is Foundry's Nuke. Latest updates include increased support for USD, and there's more coming. And we're going to dive into how you can leverage not only Nuke, but OpenUSD to further your storytelling and your workflow with different apps. So it's going to be really fun-filled and exciting. I'm going to go ahead and share a couple of quick announcements before we dive in. But my feeling is that this will be action-packed. Please feel free to post your questions in the chat whenever you're ready, so that we can start tackling them as soon as we hit those points in the live stream. The big thing I want to talk about is obviously we've got GTC coming up in March, and the website's up and running. March 17th to 21st is going to be our first in-person GTC in quite some time. And it will not only be in person, but we'll also have support for virtual stuff. So the website's super easy, nvidia.com/GTC. Head over there, check out all the offering, the sessions coming up any day now. We've also got some early bird pricing on there. We'll post a link in the chat in case that was not easy enough to remember. But we hope to see as many people there from the community as possible. And if you are headed there, let us know so we can set up a meeting. It would be great to introduce members of the team while you're there in person. We just launched this on Monday, right? Yeah, Monday. Monday we launched the Winter Art Challenge. So share your creations with the winter theme using the hashtag Winter Art Challenge on social media. You can tag at NVIDIA Omniverse. We would love to see what you're creating. That beautiful image you're seeing right there was done none other than Rafi Nizam. I think I actually may even have a workflow video from him he showed on this, so I'll play it a little bit later in the stream. But that is going to be a really fun next 2 months, actually. It's running to January 31st. So share your winter scene and inspire others. It'll be really fun to see what everybody's working on. We have a very special live stream coming up on Monday, speaking about OpenUSD. As SIGGRAPH Asia kicks off, conversations with the experts. We have members from not only the Zone team, including Aaron Luck and Animal Logic, folks from Weta. It's going to be an amazing live stream, a different time than we normally do. This is going to be Monday at 3 p.m. Pacific. So it's on our Ed event calendar. We'll post a link in the chat. We hope you all can make it. Get your OpenUSD questions ready. You're going to be really talking to some heavy hitters here, and it should be a super exciting hour. Super exciting also is Autodesk Maya's latest updates supporting OpenUSD. We have a great link we'll post in the chat, so you can check out the latest from Autodesk Maya and workflows from a fairy tale. If you were tuning in a little earlier today, you probably caught the Isaac Sim live stream series, which is alternating between Isaac Sim and Isaac Ross. So every Wednesday at 8 a.m. Pacific, you're either going to catch an Isaac Sim live stream or Isaac Ross. And it lasts for about an hour or so. We have different hosts pretty much every week. You can tune in, ask your questions. You can also post questions on the Isaac Sim Discord server if you want to chat with other users, or you can use the live stream channel if you want to post your questions beforehand. But it's a really fun hour with developers tackling some of your most hard-hitting questions. So we encourage everybody. They've had great participation from the community each one of those streams. So we hope you, if you're an Isaac fan, you will tune into one of the next ones. The Universal Scene Description OpenUSD Learning Series is on our YouTube channel. Great playlist, moderated and narrated by Aaron Luck. We'll post a link for that in the chat. If you've never heard of OpenUSD before, and today is the first time you're hearing about it, there is something in the series for new and veterans alike. It's a great series with several really informative videos. So check that out. And then I think we have, is that the last one? I think it's the last one. Okay, cool. All right. So We're very excited for today. I've had really fun time in each of the warm-ups with our presenters today, going over what some of the stuff that you'll see in this next hour. So let's start. Let's do introductions around the clock here. Let's start with Jonathan from Foundry. Hey, Jonathan.
How you doing?
Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your background and what you do at Foundry?
Yeah, so I've actually been at the Foundry only a few years now, but prior to that, I was at Digital Domain, where I was part of the team that helped build the original Nuke system. And Foundry took that over in 2008, and I went and worked in feature animation for a few years at DreamWorks, where I got involved with USD deeply. And then a few years ago, transitioned back to production software, working at the Foundry, and focused on the new 3D system and revamping Nuke's core technologies.
Well, we are very honored to have you here. I know we chatted earlier about this, but you've been working with OpenUSD for quite some time, 6 years. So we're excited to pick your brain on that a little bit. And Martin, please welcome to the show. Why don't you tell us a little about yourself and your role at Foundry?
Hi, so I'm with the Foundry for about 10 years now. I'm the head of creative specialists, we are really the internal artists who get to play with the software and testing. So my experience with USD is overall from the artistic point of view, I guess, and how we can utilize it within creating beautiful imagery inside of Nuke. Yeah, so that's pretty much me.
Great. Martin prepared a really nice video we're going to play in a few minutes that goes over some of the latest features in Foundry Nuke. So stay tuned for that, and then we'll dive into basically what Nuke is in just a moment as well. Zia Ideas, aka Alex, welcome to the live stream today. It is so awesome to have you here. Zia is usually on the other side of this, and one of the best participants in our chats. Obviously, people in the community will know him very well from being on our Discord server and the official forums. He is a shining light in the community. So Zia, so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much, Edmore. Always an honor. Happy to get the opportunity to ask questions live this time instead of just in the chat.
That's awesome. And you want to tell everybody a little bit about your background?
I'd say eclectic artist. I did After Effects for a long time, compositing, and then got interested in Nuke as an alternative to After Effects. And then as part of that, I'm really interested in the collaborative possibilities. Like we've been able to game and shoot at each other for a long time in collaborative environments, but not really able to create that well. So I'm interested in particularly USD as it applies to collaboration. And so that's what drew me to Omniverse, and then also just fascinated to see how that plays out USD in Nuke.
Well, that's a great analogy. I come from the gaming background too, and I always think about how multiplayer to have an environment where multiple creators and developers can work on the same thing at the same time is just mind blowing. So super exciting days ahead. Speaking of exciting days, Jacob, you've got a great channel on YouTube. We're so honored to have you here as well. Why don't you tell me about yourself and your channel?
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. I mean, so a little bit about me. I just graduated the Florida State Film School, College of Motion Picture Arts. And so I've been working as a freelance visual effects artist, mostly a Nuke compositor. And so with kind of the things that have been happening in Hollywood, I've been able to grow my channel and hopefully, try to teach beginners on YouTube. And so that's kind of my experience and kind of my journey so far. And so we'll see where that takes me in the future.
Man, well, I'm very excited for that future because your channel is fantastic. I'll post a link in the chat. Thanks for joining us. Speaking of great compositors, Gary, Christian, welcome to the live stream today. You are an NVIDIAN, correct? Why don't you tell everybody what you do here? And for those non-lip readers, there you go.
My mic keeps muting.
Okay.
I wasn't aware of that. Sorry. But yeah, I've been around as a generalist throughout the industry for a bit, and now I'm at NVIDIA, so still doing generalist things. And what's a little less common is for generalists, I think, is being my favorite software is Nuke. So, or one of my favorite softwares, I should say. But yeah.
That's awesome. We will find out exactly why in just a few minutes. You're going to show off a breathtaking scene, the Da Vinci Workshop. So we're going to look at that and do a little show and tell in a few minutes. But before we do, I want to also welcome Edward McGevinue, who people from the Omniverse community might recognize as one of our first Omniverse ambassadors in the community. And he recently joined Team Green over at NVIDIA here. Really excited to have him on board. Edward, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, just I'll have my camera on in a moment, but yeah, no, it's exciting to be here. It's really cool. It's been awesome getting. Well, I feel like I've already kind of connected with a lot of people at NVIDIA before joining, so it was pretty seamless as a transition. But long story short, I'm a 3D generalist. I've been working on a ton of commercials, worked in film production for a while, and have done everything from live concert visuals to product animations and the like. So my primary software was 3ds Max, but then transitioned into Houdini. And part of that is the experience jumping into Nuke as well for doing compositing. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, it's great to have you here. And so everyone, like I told you before, this is meant to be conversational. Everyone, post your questions in the chat, any comments as well. We'll post some stuff on the screen in a few minutes. But let's get started. So obviously, we've been mentioning Nuke ever since we started the show. Why don't we talk a little bit about what Nuke is and who it's meant for? And I think for that, why don't we go to Martin Mayer? Would you like me to start? You want to start talking about it, or you want to play the video first? It's up to you.
We can discuss it a little bit. We have a video that is focused on the USD inside of Nuke and essentially the updates to the 3D system. They are trying to update the 3D system into a USD, fully fledged USD. But Nuke is a compositing application. Essentially, it allows you to merge multiple sources and artistically refine those visual sources into one coherent, one good-looking image. But in this context, I think it would make sense to put the video. I think it kind of summarizes what we did on the 3D side and where we are trying to head with it. And hopefully that will kick off the conversation. And we recently introduced a completely new 3D system to Nuke, which has been...
I pressed play too soon. Okay, so we are going to start with that video. I'm going to back it up just a second. We're going to play this video. The video lasts about 6 minutes, so we're going to bring our webcams down to the bottom. While you're watching this video, everyone in the audience, head into the chat. Let us know any questions you have, where you're watching from, and we'll hit those questions in just a few minutes. But this is going to be a fantastic overview into what Foundry Nuke is and what some of the latest USD capabilities are. And then we'll get into the conversation in just a few minutes.
Hello, everyone. So this is Martin Meyer from the Foundry. And we recently introduced a completely new 3D system to Nuke, which has been re-architected from the ground up with the goal of providing greater performance at scale, while still maintaining the ease of use and familiarity artists currently enjoy inside of Nuke. So if you allow me, I would like to spend the few upcoming minutes showing you around. We are not trying to turn Nuke into another digital content creation application, as the Nuke suite of 3D tools is intentionally simplified and focused on compositing related tasks. What we aim for is for artists coming to this new system to feel at home and benefit from a modernized 3D system and provide a base from which we can build a new, exciting workflows together with our excellent user base. So we based the new 3D system architecture on USD. There are many reasons we opted for USD-based system, but at the core of it is that this allowed us to develop a more performant system targeted at the needs of Nuke and Nuke artists. Some of the most common workflows in Nuke is importing 3D data to use in any number of workflows like, for example, matte painting, projections, and relighting. And by utilizing USD, we can reduce the need for complex translation layers when importing 3D scene data. And also, we can provide near zero cost for doing simple manipulations of imported scene objects. So this essentially means that we can make core workflows like importing a 3D model and moving it around much faster. We have ensured that we keep Nuke as flexible as always and allow to work with the USD version supported by default in Nuke or by working with any USD version our users need, including custom ones. And for users not intending to work with USD, you'll still have everything you need from Nuke right out of the box, and you don't have to worry about any of this. It will be the same or a similar experience Nuke always provided, just faster. So how does this new system differ from the existing one, apart from a greater performance? Nuke's original 3D system was designed for small-scale workflows and fixed or flattened structure, and it was never intended for how artists have pushed and expanded what's possible inside of Nuke. As there was no structure, the only way to uniquely identify objects was by position, which is fragile and it can easily change, or by naming a node that created it, which doesn't distinguish between multiple objects. This means that Nuke was good at handling workflows where lots of small objects are combined to make a scene, but not so good at handling imported scenes, as there were no easy way to identify objects in the scene and that a node should operate on, or you couldn't really identify which the node should operate on. The new system, though, operates with a modern scene graph-centric processing engine. This means that for the first time there is now a proper scene graph inside of Nuke, and every object in the scene has its own unique ID. By introducing a proper scene graph-based workflow, artists have more control over the 3D scenes they work with. They have the ability to move easily and move assets between DCCs or digital content creation applications and work at even larger scale. The modifier nodes like Transform Geo, which is now the Geo Transform in the new system, now have a new mask knob that allows you to explicitly state which parts of your scene graph you want that node to affect, and create nodes like card or geocard in the new system. We'll also have a path knob that will allow you to specify where you want these new objects to live in the scene graph. These new knobs are also expression-based. This is so that by default, if you are used to just by throwing down nodes and don't want to have to think about naming a new piece of a geometry or specifying what you want the node to affect, the default expression behavior will set that for you, so you can now work without having to think about this. But for artists who want to build out complex selections or naming conventions, the expression language and token system will give you even greater control over all of this. So in Nuke 14 was the first step for this new 3D system, and it was focused on getting the core architecture in place and with as much workflow parity as possible with the classic system. However, as the scope of work did not allow us to reintroduce all the workflows and nodes our users are used to from the classic system into the new one, all in one go, we have opted to release the new 3D system as a beta feature inside of Nuke. And this is mostly because we want Nuke artists to be an integral part of shaping the new 3D system across the 14 series, and now the work continues in the 15 series, and we want to develop this new system with our users. The work and the exciting new workflows and possibilities continue to be polished also throughout the Nuke 15 series. Now, to ensure artists don't lose access to any of the workflows they depend on, we are also keeping the old 3D system running along with the new one. And this means that you will have access to all the new nodes and workflows that you are used to, but also you'll be able to create the new 3D nodes as well and work with them. It's also worth noting that the nodes from these systems will not be able to connect or interact with each other, and we want to keep these two systems separate, so eventually the 3D classic 3D system can be deprecated at some point in the future. So this is really just the start of what we are doing with USD inside of Nuke, and we hope that it's an amazing step for an artist working in Nuke 3D environment, and we are excited to keep building and developing new workflows and nodes and tools for the artists based on USD and this new highly performant 3D architecture that we have inside of Nuke now. Thank you.
Well, that was great. I'm going to take it off the screen now. I apologize for the compression. The StreamYard sometimes doesn't play longer videos back so great. But we actually have another video that we'll probably link to in the chat, which goes into kind of a deep dive also of just general Nuke features. So Martin, you can let us know in the shared chat channel we have. We'll post it in there. But really fantastic stuff. Obviously, you guys have been very, very busy. And as you can tell by some of the users that are joining us today, you have some long-term fans. So it's great to see the application evolve in such a way, especially with OpenUSD. I think as we kind of talked about it a little earlier in the warm up, it's super exciting to see more companies, more great DCCs embrace OpenUSD for this collaboration, as Zia had mentioned earlier. Not only collaboration with multiple people, but the collaboration between multiple apps, which I think we'll focus on a lot today. That must have been pretty exciting, challenging. How has been the kind of the move to OpenUSD, and what made you guys want to do that?
Well, it was both. It was challenging. It's a big system. OpenUSD is very, very functional. There's a lot to it, and Nuke kind of uses a small subset of its capabilities. So the idea was, well, how can we leverage this big, huge system while still keeping Nuke as quick and simple to use as it's always been? And so that was a big challenge of how to not dumb down, but how to simplify the tool set so that it was easy to use rather than a more robust, complex 3D tool like Houdini or Maya or something like that. So that was a challenge. And then also just simply basing the new architecture on USD natively, which was a big challenge. So we essentially were getting rid of all the old architecture underneath, under the hood, and replacing it with stock USD. It is USD under the hood. And that opens up some tremendous possibilities for us. So the key thing was trying to base the new architecture in something that we know is going to be extensible and growing over time, rather than like trying to start afresh and start something new that we built ourselves that may not expand at as quickly a rate. So by basing on a USD, we automatically adopt all the new features that USD is going to be delivering over the future. And that's really exciting for us. It makes our lives somewhat easier, and it obviously gives us great interplay with other applications, other quote unquote real 3D applications, which are do this all day long. So yeah, that's our hope. So we're starting small, and then we're going to be growing.
That's so exciting. And did you have one of the challenges? I'm wondering was since you have such a hardcore fan base that have been using Nuke for years, I assume there was some education involved there with what is OpenUSD and how does it work?
Yeah, so a key thing was how do we translate what was a very, very, very simple, easy to use system and now base it on this very complex and very powerful system and try to make it still as easy as possible. And so that was a challenge, and it's going to take a little bit of education for users, but we're hoping that if you just want to do your stock stuff that you always did, cards, projections, simple things, that is as easy as possible for you to do. You don't have to know USD necessarily. But then, as you grow, as you learn, and you think, oh, well, now maybe I can have this card, rotate and face this other object. And I can do that now using scene paths, right? Object paths. Whereas before you had to do this all with arrow connections and node connections. That's really, we want to start the system off like that, and then it'll just allow people to grow and grow and grow. And as people learn, they'll want to probably get more complex with USD and use more of its features.
Right, that's awesome. And we actually just posted the link in the chat. If anyone missed it, we're talking to the folks at Foundry Nuke. So we posted your website there. Where do you suggest new users go first? The website, obviously. Then for support, do you guys leverage forums or Discord?
We do have forums. I may have to let Martin address that.
Yes, so if you want to learn something more about Nuke, it's definitely our website. We have a great website called Foundry Learn as well. That would be another good resource once you already pick up the application. There is a great repository of learning material out there, and then of course forums. We are quite proud of our new website. It took a while to get it to the state it is right now, but it's a great place to visit.
And I think you actually have
everything you create.
And you also have a nice nice workflow. I think we're going to share your screen in a second, right? I can bring
Well, I
this
have
up.
some since open, but I'm hearing that I might have some connectivity issues. Do I?
Okay, we can circle back. So we can circle back. I see your screen at the in my little green room area below. But if you want to wait, we can look at your screen afterwards, and we can dive into the Da Vinci workshop scene with Gary. That makes sense? Okay, let's do that. Okay, so Gary, you are next up. So we've obviously been talking about the great advantages that Nuke offers for compositing, and now with greater support of USD. But can you tell me, like, so this scene you're going to show off? Let me know when you want to share your screen, and I'll bring it up. What were some of the reasons that you chose as an artist to leverage Nuke for this beautiful scene?
Well, it was kind of a no-brainer. We've been using Nuke. A lot of us artists have been using Nuke for many years. I was using it at Blur for like 10 years before this, and before that at Focus 360. And we've just been really familiar with it. And so I think it was kind of just the go-to. Also, I do believe it's probably the best compositing package out there, my humble opinion. But I was really familiar with some of the ways that we can spruce up some of the images. It's kind of like, I would say like Photoshop for moving images in a way. So you can just like grade regions of the image. You can, excuse me, noodle any little bit. We wanted to add some air particulate, little floaties in the air. And at one point we investigated using Nuke for that. A lot of it we did for this was pretty minimal in the end, but I did end up making some tools, which is really easy to do in Nuke for halation, vignette, and bloom, which was really great, just to like add some lensing effects to this to make it look as if this 3D scene that was created by all these artists was filmed through an actual physical camera. And I think that just adds this sort of realism that, as we say, that you can feel but not necessarily see. It's like so subtle. But
That is such a good way of describing it. I feel the same way when I look at it. It really does feel very alive and warm. Really, really cool use there. Okay, are you going to? Do you want to share your screen?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so we're going to take a look at this scene that we've been referring to. This is the Da Vinci workshop scene. And can you give any background about this scene and how who worked on it, or what was the purpose?
Yeah, let me just, as I pull this up, this was a lot of artists, some freelancers, a lot of people inside NVIDIA that all worked on individual props. So, we'd get like a little prop on the table and start working on that. Just let me get back to the StreamYard. I'm trying to figure out how to...
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. Take your time. And while we're waiting for that, feel free to post your questions or comments. It's a great opportunity while you have not only great users of Nuke, but also some members from the Foundry team. And we can pose your questions here. And I think I see your screen coming up, so I'll bring this up. Okay, so now we're looking at the video.
I also have a little Nuke flow I can show later if you guys are interested.
Oh, yeah, I mean, check this out. This is crazy.
So this was, like I said, each of these assets, a lot of them were just like one artist per asset. And we would, use Substance and various modeling packages like 3D Studio Max and Maya. And what's great is we were able to bring all of that into USD. USD is very versatile, so we were able to just like import whatever software package they were working on and bring it into our Omniverse scene, and it worked smoothly. It's great to hear that Nuke is going to be supporting USD going forward too, because all of our assets are USD. So
that's great. And Zia actually has a good question in the chat, even though he's here. He's also in the chat. Zia, you're like everywhere. But hey, it's curious how you dealt with scale. Because you said all these assets were done by different artists. It must have been a challenge to get everything to look, right?
So you mean like consistency?
Yeah, I think that's what he's referring to.
Yeah, there was a little bit of back and forth. Actually, surprisingly, not too much, but we would drop it into the scene and, get a round of notes or two, try it back in the scene, another round of notes. But it wasn't that much, honestly. It just kind of came in. I think balancing the wood was probably one of the big things.
Yeah, I mean, the lighting is just now it's shifting to night with candles. We got a good question here. Any special magic for light through the atmosphere? Any tips for there?
We used Omniverse Composer, which was it wasn't always called. It was renamed Composer, but that was just fairly recently. So we did the fog in Composer. All of it was rendered together, actually, which is kind of a unique approach. But Composer is able to do a lot of this stuff in the engine. It can even do chromatic aberration and vignette and stuff like that. But for this project, we saved that for Nuke. So the fog is actually rendered as part of the scene here.
Do you know, you might not know this, but do you know if this scene is being released to the public? We got that good question from Simply Channable here, another great member of the community. Do you know that, Carrie? Or we can check out in the background. I'll see if maybe Amelia, if listening, maybe you can check in on that.
I'm sorry, what was that?
The question was if this scene is available to the public to fool around with.
It will be actually soon. I believe we're going to be releasing a real-time version of this. So all of this will be,
nice.
You'll be able to just navigate through the scene as you see it.
Wild. That's awesome. Okay, so that is coming soon with a little TM mark after it, but hopefully it won't be too long in the future. That's great. If you are a member of our Discord server, feel free to ping us once in a while on there, and we'll try to get you the latest. Discord.gg/NVIDIA Omniverse. Very cool. And what else can you share about your Nuke workflow with this scene?
I can show a couple of little tools. Like I said, we really simplified it here. We're used to doing, more complex stuff with 3D cameras and smoke world position passes and Z-depth and stuff. But on this show, we didn't really do any of that. We just kind of did lens effects here. And so it's easy for anybody to be able to create a tool in Nuke. I would say anybody could really do it. It's so simple. So what's great about it is you just kind of compile all your favorite things. Up here on the upper right, you can see I've made a vignette tool, and it can just change the size. I made it so you can view it by itself here. Change the fall off, off center it if for some odd artistic reason you wanted to do that. There's a halation tool, which adds, that little sort of lens degradation around highlights. If you could zoom in really, really close, you kind of see stuff like that. That's another thing, like you feel it, but you don't really see it. It's not so obvious when you're looking at the whole image. And then obviously bloom, which I've added, it's great that you can see this little range slider inside the tool here. But it's so easy to make these, just compile this stuff. You can like omit the center so that when you add the bloom back on top of the image, it's not increasing the core values. But yeah, that's pretty much the most complicated thing we did. The rest of it's just simple grading, some lens distortion and grain.
Very cool. Nice to have you with us, Michael Wagner, in the chat, Omniverse ambassador and Sync Twin founder. So Michael's also very impressed by what he's seeing here. Michael usually dives into the warehouse kind of scenes and robotic, but he's basically helping to bring digital twins to companies. So everybody should check out Sync Twin. Very cool. We have a question here for Simply Channable. What kind of hardware was used to render out the scene? Do you know?
For DaVinci, we were using the latest generation of cards. I believe we're using a render farm, and I think the cards on that render farm were kind of newer generation NVIDIA cards. So they're all GPU. It's utilizing the GPU to render all this stuff. So like 4090s. I think back then there was a couple older generation cards on the farm too. I'm not exactly sure. I just know that it looked good when it came back. And,
it looks awesome.
Yeah.
We got another question about render times with a playful answer, 800 years, which I don't think is true.
No, these render, because they're on the GPU, they render amazingly fast, especially coming from companies that used CPU rendering. it was just amazing to be able to do this. And they would, because they're crunching this on a GPU or like sometimes multiple GPUs per computer on this render cloud that we were using, they would come back like maybe 10, 20 minutes per frame. Pretty amazing.
Really amazing. Another question from our fellow participant on live stream, Zia. What are some of the benefits of adding something like bloom or motion blur in Nuke versus in a 3D package? Take that one.
My favorite thing about that is that it's really non-destructive. I guess it would be in the 3D package as well and DCC, but you really get the opportunity to noodle it after you've rendered the images, and in conjunction with doing grading and hotspots or whatever focal things that you would do in like Lightroom as a photographer. You get to sort of approach an image as a photographer in Nuke, or as somebody working in Photoshop, and just really refine it in that way. And I would say that Nuke is more geared for that sort of approach, just because of the conjunction of different tools that you have. And it's, if you don't like it, render it really quickly, look at it, and then you get to see the entire pass all animated, and then make a slight adjustment, and it renders out really quickly. So you can iterate really quickly too.
Amazing. Very cool. Thanks for sharing that. That's great. Let me take this off the screen. I think, Edward, are you with us right now?
I am, yep.
You are indeed. Okay, cool. Because we do have a nice work that Edward's been working on also. There he is. So let me see. You have two videos here. We have the short clip is what you want to play first.
Yeah. So that we'll start with the short clip. Something too crazy to share. This is a short film that I'm working on, which is leveraging. Initially, it was in 3ds Max. Now it's being finished in Houdini, and hopefully dabbling in Omniverse to get some of those shots out as well. It's kind of like a mishmash of a bunch of technologies, and Nuke is kind of being used at the heart for the compositing side of things. So that's where, once you play it here, I can kind of talk a little bit more about it.
Okay, let's go ahead. Let's do that, and let's show what you're talking about. Here we go.
So those are the two shots I have so far.
No, I can see where you're going. I'm sorry, but the when I go to some videos, the way they're positioned, StreamYard will keep the webcams on the screen for some reason. So sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
Well, anyway, so that is called Dare to Dream. Is that the title so far?
Yeah, so it's a working title. It's an homage to the future of manufacturing and automation. I absolutely love robotics and anything to do with Arduino and anything as far as amateur electronic engineering goes. So that's where this is kind of an homage to that side of things. And so this is where the user kind of, sees some kind of machine being built in this facility. And at the very end, we reveal that it's actually a space shuttle that's being worked on, but it's a completely automated workflow. If you guys have any insight into aviation or how things are manufactured on that side of things, it's all done by hand. It's all very bespoke. My dad's an aerospace engineer. When I went to Bombardier and I saw how these airplanes were built, it's all handcrafted for the most part. There's very few parts that are actually done in an automated way. So that's kind of like, this is where the future is going. And I'd love to kind of see what that looks like. So this is kind of taking my 3D skills and trying to bring that.
Very cool. All right, I'm gonna try. I'm going to play it one more time because it's so short. I'm gonna play it again. Let me see if I can get rid of our webcams for a second.
Yeah. So then the longer form one is the previs. So I took a bunch of Getty shots and I kind of stitched together a story. And then the idea is like, okay, if that's what it looks like on the previs side, can I actually take some of these shots as inspiration and recreate them? So you'll see that second shot there is actually a recreation of a stock clip, but entirely in 3D. So I can talk about it from a tech perspective after.
Okay, let me show the first video again really quick, and then we'll come back. Okay, cool. Now we got it in our head.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to start the second one now?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, here we go. Awesome.
Yeah, so it's you kind of get a bit of a sense of kind of the emotion and the vibe that I'm going for. It's just all very much in like the heavy automation and just the beautiful imagery that you can get from seeing, you know, everything from the foundry of the raw materials that are being worked on to, you know, the precision that you get with robotics and all like the welding and yeah, just from the final touches of seeing the machine come alive, you know what I mean? So that's kind of where those two shots were initially being built. The first one was built in 3ds Max, and then there was a lot of Houdini stuff that was brought into 3ds Max after, but the new shots are being entirely built within Houdini. So it's a very high set. There's a lot of simulation shots within it. And I wanted to have a lot of control over the final images. So in Nuke, all of the lighting passes were actually passed out. So each individual spotlight in the warehouse scene is a separate pass. And that actually, the flicking on of the lights was actually a post effect that was animated. I didn't want to do that within 3ds Max just because I wanted to have control over it. So that's just a cool example of what you can do in the compositing side of things. And then the next step is getting more into like the deep compositing side of things, which is allows you, for anyone who has any understanding of how stuff works, is when you're rendering out volumes, if you're rendering out smoke or explosions, you can have depth brought into Nuke and have it so that certain elements within Z space interact properly together. If you have sparks flying, they interact properly with your smoke or your explosion or whatever kind of effect you're going for. It can be very intense size-wise, but actually one of the questions, Jonathan, and I don't know if Martin, you have any insight as well, when it comes to USD, when you have that real 3D data within Nuke, does that eliminate any of that deep compositing things? Like if you don't want to natively render in your USD scene within Nuke, but you want to be able to take that 3D data and that 3D depth information, have that actually be used as pass information, can you do that, or do you still have to go through the deep compositing route?
You could.
Well,
Depends how you. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
I mean, from the artistic point of view, you could generate something like a Z pass as long as the geometry is matching, and you could bring the geometry in. You could do projections. You could do a lot of things based on the data, because it's the whole scene comes in this time around, pretty much identical to whatever you can have in 3D app. So that gives you a lot more freedom in terms of what you can do with it. Z pass would be, and position pass and things like that would be, or all kinds of ramps and projections, and it can be all done all within Nuke. But then, if you need to mask something based on true volume, then you need the deep data.
When I was seeing the example scene that Amar had playing earlier, one of the things that immediately crossed my mind is I'm like, well, if you see like the fuselage of a plane and you want to be able to have a card, let's just say you want to have some subtle smoke kind of rising out of one of the bays or something like that, rather than doing anything where you're just kind of manually rotoscoping or you're using, you know, a Z pass of the fuselage out of your DCC, I was just curious if you have the exact identical copy of that USD scene from your compositing software, if you can actually then use that to generate different masking elements that can be used to cut out cards or, you know, any.
You could also use it to render the data. That's another thing.
Yeah. So
inside of Nuke.
Very cool.
And merge it from two streams.
Yeah, the main limitation is obviously the rendering of that. Whether or not the rendering in Nuke matches your 3D DCC perfectly, and so there's a little bit of restrictions there. But yeah, that's a very common use of importing 3D data into Nuke is to do cutouts and mats and things like that.
Cool. Okay, yeah, no, it's definitely the USD side of things exciting because, you know, we use it so much in Omniverse and for other areas, especially just how seamlessly you can transition from assets with Houdini. So yeah, that's definitely something I'd love to explore more, and it's exciting that you guys are going that direction.
Very cool.
It definitely works. Tested.
Yeah.
Very cool. And for anyone wondering, that is a real bar behind Edward. We're all in line right now for his opening party there.
Yeah, totally.
One day we'll live stream from there as a group. Okay, so Jacob, as I mentioned earlier, you're doing amazing work. Recently graduated. Congratulations. So great to have you here. So cool to see your channel's growth. Happy you're able to come here and share your workflow with us. We had a warm up and you showed me something really kind of phenomenal. I'm excited to share this with everybody on the screen. I think we got it right here. Look at that.
Yeah, actually, this is a great segue now that we're talking about kind of the USD passes and stuff that you can do inside of Blender, or sorry, inside of Nuke. And I actually have it right here. So we have the entire kind of USD scene I have loaded in here, and I'm actually doing exactly what kind of the founder Martin and Jonathan were talking about, and actually using it for depth pass reasons and stuff like that. And so I think it, for me, you know, normally I would do this in kind of a 3D application. And, you know, for example, for this scene, in case, you know, the animation changed for the ship or anything like that, I would have had to re-render out all the different passes, a depth pass from like Unreal or Blender or kind of whatever 3D package. And so actually having the USD scene inside of Nuke was really beneficial, because then I didn't have to re-render out everything. Everything kind of just automatically updated. And I think, you know, Jonathan was talking about how if it lines up, then you can actually use it for mask information. So I'm using this kind of depth pass to actually influence some of the color of our ship. You can see in here, if I turn off this little node I have, basically I just wanted the background of the ship to kind of be affected and have some more orange in the scene to kind of match it to the orange over here. And so instead of kind of color correcting the entire ship, I was actually able to use the USD to kind of only affect kind of the back part of the ship over here. And so that's just one of the ways, as they were just talking about it, kind of just a inside the program look at kind of how that looks. And it just gives a lot of possibilities with compositing. So that's my biggest feature that I love with USD inside of Nuke. So
Very cool. And how much time did you say you would have spent, like, you know, studying Nuke? You used it in school too, right?
Yeah, so I'm going on about a year and a half to 2 years of you know, learning Nuke. You know, and so this is very achievable, I think, for beginner artists. I'm surrounded by a bunch of like industry standard professionals, and so, you know, if I can do this with 2 years experience, you know, I'm sure everybody else can, you know, apply it to their own way and stuff, and use USD in a way that not only benefits the efficiency of your scene, but also if you think about if you're working in visual effects pipelines and stuff like that, where you have a lot of different artists working on the same shot. Maybe something happens at the early stages of the pipeline that needs to be changed. Me as a compositor, I'm towards like kind of the later half of a visual effects pipeline. And so it's really important that I have all the most up-to-date kind of versions of everything, and having a USD file, I can kind of guarantee that on my end as a compositor. So
That's a really good point. And do you have any suggestions or advice for people who are just kind of getting started with Nuke? What would you say?
I mean, honestly, I think Jonathan and Martin hit it on the head. They have a ton of forums, a ton of learning things. I come from a film school background, and so that's actually where I was able to learn most of my Nuke experience and all that fun stuff. I had a ton of great teachers there. However, there are many different ways. I would say it's, you know, now that we're connected through online, there's tons of different ways to, you know, learn stuff online. And the Foundry has done an amazing job of kind of getting people into that and making it easy for those beginners out there who might look at the scene and be very, you know, very worried of how complicated it looks, you know. And so I think it's surprisingly easy once you kind of understand, you know, the basics of the Nuke compositing. So.
Very cool. Jacob, that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing this. And your workflow, actually, you use Unreal Engine a lot. You obviously, you mentioned Blender earlier too, you're using. It's really cool to be able to leverage multi-apps for doing, like, bringing a vision like this to life. All right, we also have another little show and tell, I think, from another long-term user from our community. That is none other than Zia Ideas, who's with us today. Hey, Zia, how you doing?
Hey, Edmar.
I've
I'm wondering, can we keep this footage up from Jacob for a second?
Yeah, of course.
This is, I think, I was coming from an After Effects background doing educational material, and in After Effects, you just have hundreds of layers, and so you really kind of get siloed as, you know, one individual working on one shot. And so what we see here from Jacob's screen is all the different nodes, and then he has backgrounds, right? Unreal ship pass, original footage, depth pass, flares. Well, any of us watching the stream can guess what those scripts do in that area. And so this is what really drew me to Nuke, is that instead of having all my layers and all my effects and all my work kind of siloed, now we have a map, right? And so, like, Jacob could hand this map to Edmar and say, hey, I need some additional work done on the flares, or we need additional flares. And so the modularity of these scripts, along with the way they're documented as node-based segments, just made it so it's so much easier to read and to share with others. If I had to hand off my After Effects scene with 100 or 200 layers, it becomes unmanageable. Or even worse, if Jacob has to come back to this scene in like 2 months, right? Say footage has changed down the road and he needs to come back and revisit the scene, Jacob, you're still going to be able to know where everything is, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've had times where I come to a project, 2 or 3 months later, and just being able to tell from like a quick glance exactly what 2-month-old Jacob was thinking at the time. It's very nice to be able to do that because you think at the time that everything is that I'd be able to remember that stuff. You learn fast that your organization is key in any visual effects pipeline, and so I think you hit it kind of on the head right there. So.
I think that's a great note for the community at large, as we think long term is that organization is key, and then being able to revisit the shots and then each module in the shot and each effect. And then I agree with Jacob, as I know I've been in a shot and like, no, I'll remember it, and then sure enough you do come back 2 months later and things are different or tools have updated. So yeah, I think this is one of the main appeals to doing something versus like Photoshop, right, where we have layers, but it's not always clear. When I was doing programming, we were always told to document our code, and most of us hated that and never did it. But later, as you come back to revisit stuff, then you can see here fog passes, flares. Right? This is essentially being able to document your code as you go. The other really nice thing about this is your producer might come in or your client might come in and say, hey, what's taking so long? Well, when you're able to bring up a nice script like this, then like immediately they can see the complexity that's going into the shot, and then you get some estimates on that.
Those are great points. You guys must hear that a lot from your community, right? Jonathan and Martin?
Absolutely. I mean, and on top of it, I think this whole approach kind of captures the artist's intent. So it's very easy to read comparatively to timeline-based organization, I find, personally.
That's very cool. That's a great point. And so, Zia, you've been working with Nuke for what version did you start doing that tutorial for?
Oh, I started off. So if you want to share my screen, I'll show you an example of just the layer-based approach. I started off. I think I first got interested. I was really interested in Shake just because of all the special effects. Anybody who's drawn to special effects has got to wonder, well, how did they do that? And then so I found out, like, basically special effects was like a magic sorcery club. You had to be in the club to know how they did it. But that's changed over time. And then so Shake went away, and then Nuke came in to fill the void. And I just want to say special thanks to everybody at the Foundry for everything you've done for artists everywhere. And awesome. Then so, thanks. So this is, you can see here, this would be a typical scene that I would be using in After Effects with just layers upon layers, and then you're making modifications, you're doing blooms, whatever it is, and then you're just adding every layer. And then you can create composites and you can have notes, sort of, but way different from what we see from like node-based compositing. So, and then, so the other beautiful thing is that I can pick up somebody else's script, right? I can look at scripts from Iron Man or, other professional productions, if they've released them. And you can follow that map and you can check and see how that was, how did they do it versus how I did it. And I think mentioned was the artist's intent, and I think that's really well put. The other part is I'm a bit of a fanatic when it comes to organization, so I love being able to draw these lines. Like, I'm kind of looking for that PCB aesthetic. I'm hoping to see, I might be the only one doing it that way. But yeah, I just like to see the way the nodes look on the screen when I'm working with them. And then so this was this particular production was a documentary, and you can imagine that low budget documentary, and then you can imagine that there's a voiceover and it's a poet and he's reciting his poem, and he's just talking about like the poignancy of life and then also death, because we don't actually know where we're going, but we're all striving and we're all working on our lives, going up this hill and making progress, but we don't always know what's at the end of it. And so as an editor, this was the shot I was given, and this is shot in Colorado, and it's okay, but I like some of the inspiration I get from Ansel Adams. When he talks about his work, he talks about taking a photograph in Yosemite and then having the license to spend hours with it in the darkroom to make it feel like, to evoke the emotion that he felt when he took that shot on that day in front of those mountains or whatever it was. And so when I was working with this shot, I was like, it's okay. And I'm listening to the voiceover, and I know there's going to be music that helps the shot, but it still doesn't have that sense of, like, it just feels like it needs something more. And I know all of you guys working with your productions have felt that at times. And so in addition, like, there's things, so in Photoshop, like, if anybody's a Photoshop user, you can use Nuke, right? And so in Photoshop, to remove this pagoda, very easy, right? Simple clone, masking, like, done. But of course, this is film, so right, we have many frames that we have to work with. And so we don't want to introduce artifacts, and we don't want to have to paint on each frame of the film. So to be able to use this footage in Nuke, and then, like, I know I want to remove the pagoda because I want something more timeless. I want something slightly more eternal. So I don't need this kind of realism. Like, I don't need the stuff that puts it, hey, this is Colorado and there's a park and there's a pagoda. That's not the stuff I want. In addition, like, it's a simple thing, but I love the idea that he's talking about end of life. So at the end of the shot, I just kind of want him to fade out rather than just him walking just a little bit. Subtle was the word mentioned a couple times on the stream. So I'm just looking for kind of like a subtle effect. And then, so let's look at we can look at kind of what that shot became. So as an editor, great to have something like Nuke that I know is not, terrifying complex. And we heard about how the tools have been simplified to allow that accessibility. And so I think, as an editor, I'm looking at this and I'm like, well, why don't I just get rid of the pagoda, and maybe I can just do that fade, and maybe that shot will carry the emotion that I'm looking for. So you can see here, so the pagoda's gone, right? And so because of the camera tracking in Nuke, that makes that possible. He's got, of course you can affect the speed. You can, you can time ramp stuff up fast or slow. And then we'll just see, like, there's just a little bit of fade in there. I want it to be subtle. Like, if you're paying attention and the shot's working, then maybe you catch that and you go, yeah, okay, as the narration ends. And so, like, these were all relatively easy to do in Nuke, and then allow time for other things. Like, if we look at the original sky, pretty generic. But if you think about Ansel Adams, he talks about, like, hitting every note on the keyboard and every different color for scale. And so, like, I just added contrast to the scene, added vignette, like you guys have talked about, graded the scene for contrast, and then you can add your own time ramp to the sky. So speed up the clouds a little bit. I think I added some extra clouds blended in just to add some emphasis to that shot. And they're all just little things that are made possible by way of Nuke. And if we look at, I think Gary, this was your scene with the Da Vinci, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Awesome. So I love, I don't know if you did this documentation, but I love the way you did this chart here.
That was not me that did that particular documentation. That was
Okay.
a person on our team. But yeah, it is
I think
it's very concise and clear.
right. So I am very hopeful that Omniverse will, in addition to adopting USD, might allow us to have like a node-based system where we can see clearly what is going in the shot, right? And you can look at these two, and they're, this is pretty close. And I think this is a really intuitive way to, approach information, which is basically what we're doing in this documentation, versus like a layer-based setup where all my layers are smashed together. And then, yeah, I'm super interested, in a shot like you saw with Gary, where you have many artists working, or even in this basic shot, it would have been great to utilize the collaborative nature of USD, where I have a friend in Pakistan and he's working on removing the pagoda. I got another friend in Vancouver and he's working on the fade. And so you have artists working together collaboratively in real time, and not just working in their silos behind their computers all day long. So those are some of the things I'm hoping for the future.
Well, that is awesome. What a great project you just showed off too. I love the emotion you put into everything and the thought.
Yeah.
Very, very cool show and tell, man.
Thank you. Awesome to be here.
Well, I can't thank everybody enough for joining us today. This has been a really fun hour. Before we leave, I want to know if anyone here has any last thoughts that they'd impart with our viewers, maybe that we missed during the stream. So feel free to share those words of wisdom right now. Let's see who's brave. Jonathan's thinking about it. There he is.
Well, I was going to say that one of the main advantages to Nuke has always been that you can look at it as a Lego box, right? A box of Lego. And when you first open up Nuke, it's an empty blank screen, but you can start building a Lego set out of those pieces. And it's about not feeling fear when you see that blank screen, that you can start working and building and modifying and constantly upgrading. And that's one of its main strengths, is that it allows you to expand quickly, stay simple, or get more complex. And it's so flexible that allows you to have that speed.
That's awesome.
Absolutely.
That's really well said. So we're going to close out the live stream with something I mentioned earlier on, since we just announced our Winter Art Challenge. A great example of multi-app workflow creators is Rafi Nizam, one of our Omniverse ambassadors. So he shared a great promo image that we used to kick things off on Monday. And not only did he do that, he actually created a little video. So I'm going to play that, and then we'll say our goodbyes right after this. Great work, Rafi. Yeah, his company's fantastic. So if you're not following Rafi, check us out on LinkedIn. He's posted a lot of great stuff and work that his company does. I want to again thank everybody for joining us. It was a really fantastic hour. Jacob, also special thanks to you for sharing the stream with your own channel. We got to see a bunch of viewers come in from your own channel. Welcome to our community. Really excited to see what you do next, Jacob. You're welcome back anytime, as well as obviously Jonathan, Martin. You guys come back anytime you have an update to share. Really excited about what you've been doing, not only just in the features of Nuke, but the support of USD and the furthering of that efforts coming up down the road in your roadmap. Really exciting, and can't wait to see what other creators do, combining all these workflows from different DCCs together, leveraging the great power of Nuke. Thank you, Gary, for coming on, and Edward, congratulations for joining Team Green. I'm telling everybody, I can't wait till you start bossing me around here now.
Yes, thank you.
But really great to have everybody here. We'll see everybody, and the next live stream is going to be the USD Ask the Experts on Monday, kicking off SIGGRAPH Asia at 3 p.m. Pacific. So check out our Ed event calendar for that, and then we'll be back same day and time next week for this live stream, where we're going to go over the Winter Art Challenge and invite several creators to come on to show off their workflows for creating their winter scenes using multiple apps and OpenUSD, of course. Until then, I hope everybody has a great afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Great questions and comments in the chat. Great to be with you today.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Edmund.
everyone.
Awesome.
Bye.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.